I'm a software engineer with a full-time job and a side hustle of doing freelance coding work in my own time. I've always been the type to have a side hustle I put a lot of my free time into. I get really bored sitting idle. My freelance hourly rates are $60 an hour, and at my full-time job, my hourly pay works out to about $40 an hour. So that's how I value my time. Anyway, over Christmas vacation, I was staying at my parents' house. My cousin was also staying over with her 3 young kids from Christmas to New Year's. I'd been planning on doing some work on my freelance projects when I had free time, in the mornings when my family had no plans. I wasn't in any rush. I was already ahead of schedule on them all, but I didn't really have anything else to do. It was in a really rural area and it's like an hour drive to the nearest anything. Then my cousin and her husband asked if I could babysit all day for 3 days so they could visit some friends in the area and hang out with just adults. I said I had planned on doing freelance work at the library, and she offered to pay me to babysit. I said I could if they got close to my freelance rates. She wanted a number, and although my freelance rates are $60, I didn't feel like that was right. It was high. But I didn't want to go too low. Honestly, babysitting 3 kids would be harder for me than the routine coding work I had for my freelance project. I don't know a lot about kids and I've never babysat for long, and I had a feeling it would be stressful and difficult. So I said $35, which is below what I make hourly at work, and what is the bare minimum I'd value my time for, if that time is spent doing difficult work. And she went crazy at me, saying that's a ridiculous rate for babysitting, that I was entitled and being selfish, that I'm trying to take advantage of how she didn't have other options, etc. I said that's way below what I'd be making if I had the time to do my own work, and I'd be putting off my own work to babysit. Her husband then got mad at me, saying that I was a 24-year-old girl, that I'm damn near a child myself, that my time is not worth that much and it's childish to say that it was, and that I was a stupid girl for not knowing that babysitting costs like $15 an hour. When I grew up and have kids of my own, I will see how stupid I was being. I was kind of done with being called stupid, so I just told them I hope they could find someone else. My mom thinks that I asked for something offensive, and my cousin and her husband obviously did too. My son Simon, he is 16, moved out of the room he used to share with his little brother and got his own room a few months back. Ever since, he's been complaining about his mom barging in without knocking and interrupting his sleep and studying. Sometimes when he's changing, I know that she's his mother, but he says he's got his own room and has a job and is learning to become an independent adult, but doesn't feel like his privacy is being respected even when that's his mom. He says he's not a kid anymore and is entitled to at least get a knock on the door before she comes in. He was getting tired of her not listening to him, so he came to me and said, "Dad, you need to help me set some clear boundaries with Mom." So I spoke to her about her need to knock before entering Simon's room. She was like, "What? And no, we're family, not strangers. Do you really expect me to foolishly knock on the door 5 times a day? That's ridiculous. Also, the knocks doors in their own home?" I told her my family, for instance. She made a face, then went on a rant about how my family hate each other's and the way they treat each other's like they were strangers is shameful. I told her family or strangers, it's about respecting one's privacy. We had an argument about it, and I told her if she wasn't going to stop with the barging and refuse to knock on the door before entering, then our son will get a lock. She did it again at 11 p.m. She barged in when our son was asleep. He jumped up because he got scared. Once he told me this, I told him to go ahead and get a lock and pay for it with his own money. There was literally no other way. My wife saw it and got upset, and my brother was visiting when she was raising her voice at me if I really went ahead and got a lock for Simon despite her disapproval, and said that I caught her off guard and it's not okay. Because this teaches our children that they can manipulate one parent into doing what they want. I told her that Simon got the lock, not me, and I already warned her about the possibility of him getting a lock, because he was getting tired of her boundary crossing. So she should have expected this outcome. She mentioned the same above points in her defense and said locks mean secrets, and that's not good. My brother was sitting watching while she was complaining. She began chewing him out when he asked her to let Simon keep the lock and said it wasn't a big deal. She stopped talking to me and Simon till we removed the lock, but I've no intentions on doing that. I have a lot of family members. I come from a religious community that doesn't believe in the public school system and tends to have a ton of kids. I have an older sister, Julia, a stepbrother, Ron, a stepsister, Molly, a half-brother, Joe, and a half-sister, Lucy. Growing up, all of us were homeschooled. This involved a lot of neglect, lack of textbooks or seasonally appropriate clothes / shoes, unheated house, and sometimes physical abuse. I lived mostly with my mom, but spent weekends with my step-family. Both houses were dysfunctional. My stepmom used to have a severe problem with alcoholism, although she's been better in the last few years. Ron is my best friend and I would be lost without him. We've supported each other through years of hard times. And we discuss a lot how our lives could have been different if we'd been sent to school or generally had a more healthy home life. Obviously, we don't want the same thing for our younger siblings. And don't want to see them struggling in minimum wage jobs while trying to study for a GED the way we're doing. When I went to visit him recently, I found that my stepmom had gone out of the country for an entire week and left the youngest two at the house. Ron and Molly both work. Molly hasn't been doing any homeschooling for about 2 years and are out of the house for most of the day and night. I tried to help Lucy with her math homework, but she was extremely behind grade level and kept getting distracted because she had to make lunch or do chores. Joe spends all day in his room playing video games and gets no guidance from anyone. I tried to as gently as possible get him to do some reading, but he doesn't understand how serious the situation is. And obviously is having too much fun to care. So I called CPS and reported educational neglect. And obviously everyone knew it was me. And Ron told me that stepmom said I wasn't welcome at the house anymore and to never contact any of them again. Molly is extremely mad at me. She blocked me on Facebook and doesn't have a cell phone where I can reach her. Julia, who somehow heard about all this despite living across the country, also blocked me on Facebook and reported my Facebook as impersonating a celebrity. Facebook deleted it, generally making everything harder. This stings even more because I'm already estranged from my biomom over my religious beliefs. I now have no family members left, besides Ron, thank bejeebus, who want anything to do with me. I feel like I make enemies everywhere I go. Ron has been saying for years that he can't call CPS, and I guess this is why, but at least he doesn't blame me. He suggested that I try to talk to stepmom once some time has passed, but I would have no idea where to begin. I have a daughter, Sadie, with my ex-husband, John. We got divorced 5 years ago and I have primary custody while he sees her 2 weekends a month. Last year, he got married to Amanda, who has sole custody of her kids from a previous marriage. Amanda is a SOM, not for any health reasons or so on, she just doesn't want to work, while John works at a 9 to 5. He makes good money to support them, but not enough to live in luxury. I have a much higher paying job. Since it's just me and Sadie, I make sure she has the best possible life. She goes to a private school, set her up a college fund, and she has much better things than most kids: phone, clothes, etc. I still manage to raise her to be humble and not take things for granted, and she's one of the hardest working people I know. Always making sure to get good grades and keep her room tidy. Well, the last few times she came back after a weekend at John's, I noticed that the clothes she was bringing back in her duffel are A, not her size, and B, much cheaper and poorer quality than what I usually buy for her. I asked her why that is and she told me that while she's at her dad's, Amanda takes away her nice clothes and gives them to her kids while Sadie gets the clothes they buy from Target. I asked her if she wanted them back, but she said she didn't mind sharing since all her favorite clothes were kept here. The problem came when I went to pick her up last weekend. I had a business meeting and couldn't drive her over, so Amanda offered to just pick Sadie up from school, which hadn't happened before. When I got there on Sunday, John and Amanda asked me to sit down with them, and when Sadie came to hug me, Amanda sent her to her room quite harshly, saying her punishment wasn't over yet. I was confused because Sadie very rarely misbehaves. They sat me down in the kitchen and said that it was unfair for Sadie to be going to a private school while her kids go to a public one. So they decided that Sadie would be pulled out of private school and put in the same school as the girls. They also said I should keep up Sadie's punishment because when they told her, she blew up at them, told them it wasn't fair, and yelled that Amanda and her kids weren't even her real family, that all they did was steal. I told them in no uncertain terms to off. I would not be pulling my child out of a school she likes, away from her friends, because they can't afford it. I told them they could easily make as much money as me if Amanda started working in her field because she has the qualifications, and the job market is very good. I told them their money problems are not my issue, and if Sadie's items get stolen again or they try to pull her out of school, I'll be taking this to court. They've been blowing up my phone ever since, calling me a selfish. And after telling the story to a friend, he told me I was rubbing my success in their face. But I still don't feel like I did anything wrong. I got temporary guardianship while waiting for a court hearing. We're going to try to get full custody and have John get 1 day a week of visitation, supervised for at least the first few months, and no contact with Amanda or her kids. This way, he still sees Sadie just as much and they can try to repair their relationship, but she doesn't have to go back there. All contact between us is made through emails which are CC'd by my lawyer, and I've asked for Sadie's things back. I've talked to Sadie and we've decided that she's going to try therapy for a little while to help deal with everything that's happened. We've had the hearing and our custody arrangements been modified. Any and all decisions relating to Sadie are made by me, and me alone. John has supervised visitation once a week. And Sadie will continue in therapy to deal with all the issues Amanda and company have caused her. They tried to push for 50/50 custody split on grounds of alienation. So me trying to put Sadie against her father. But we made it clear from the start that we wanted to keep Amanda and her children away. And wanted supervision only because we don't feel safe leaving him alone as of yet, but that we were open to modifications. Thanks to that, the proof of stealing, and Sadie's therapist's testimony, their claim was thrown out pretty quickly. Amanda's pissed, and has tried to contact me and Sadie, but I made it clear to her that if she keeps harassing me or my daughter, I'll have to make this known to the authorities. Sadie and I have blocked her everywhere, and any communication between John and us is made through text messages or emails only.